Hey there, my name is Jason Wright, and this is a behind the scenes for the weapon test of the ETX Cracker. I'm just going to go ahead and play through this video. So here I am on the scene here. You can see there's a little bit of a optical flare effect happening here. Did some coloring of this shot, and I actually shot this by myself. Had a problem with resources, but I also figured that this would be simple enough to accomplish alone, although every time you think that, then something, of course, comes up that makes it difficult. The target back there is something I dropped in, and of course the weapon I customized. You can see that in one of the other videos. You got some multiple effects here, heat distortion, some nice little ads, scenic shot, establishing shot, give you an idea of where I am. And then you have this explosion, this grand explosion of lightning bolts and sparks and all of that. A little celebration there at the end. And of course, my sign off.
Cracker just laid some shit on that target. Love it, baby. Love it. Peace out, baby.
I got that nice fire and smoke in the background. And this is a section I just added because I thought it would be funny just to kind of give that weird white gangster wannabe sort of army soldier feel. I think it added a nice touch. It's just a silly thing to add. Of course, there's multiple takes, and you hear some of that audio in the background there. So this is my After Effects set of compositions here, and what I had to go through and do is add a lot of sort of elements to most of the scenes, whether that be a little bit of a flare to add some dimension to the shot, or the actual sort of effects that are happening at the gun in the background. If I click around to some of these different shots here, changes to fit. If we look at some of the other compositions here, you'll see this is where I've got about 12 layers, and I've added in sort of the light effects here with the sort of glowing light that moves back and forth to kind of simulate some sort of mechanical charge happening. Now, at the same time, I got a lot of sound going on. One of the things you might be wondering is, what was the decision behind some of the deafening sound? I kind of, I wanted to have a stark contrast from sort of the quiet, normal sound and banter to just the weapon. I wanted the focus to be the character, but I also wanted it to be the weapon. And with a name like ETX Cracker, I really wanted to have some sound effects in there that really ramped that up and really felt like a cracking, just a really sharp noise to your ear. Clicking through these other compositions, you'll see that, again, more lights in the composition here, the green lights. Again, needing to do this shot to sustain that feeling that the weapon's being charged up, and of course building some tension with pulling the trigger here. Continuing through the comps, I got a little further distant shot here. I wish that it maybe was at a little bit of a different angle, sort of instead of straight on. It gives kind of a little flatter feel, and it's harder to pull some dimension there. But still, nonetheless, it's quick, and it kind of gives you some space to breathe and see what's going on. You can see that this composition here has about 15 layers. I believe this is the primary composition here, and this is where a lot of things came into play, and really a lot of elements that I didn't quite understand in the beginning when I had shot this. There's a lot going on. I believe there's 30, 40 layers in here, something like that. Yeah, about 40 layers. We've got multiple optical flares. We got explosions. We have fire and smoke and charges and lightning bolts. If I scroll through here, there's a little bit of heat distortion right before the shot in there. Of course, you have this projectile that's sort of flying down the way, and you get this sort of grand explosion here, and the following cheer. Just scrolling through here, one of the biggest challenges that, again, sort of diving into the VFX world is that every time a part of my body or an object passes over this explosion, I have to cut that out. So, meaning I have to pull a mat, meaning that I have to pull a mask around that object and put that as a new layer over the top. So it's a lot of what I have in here as far as layers go. I have so the mask, last celebration, and first walk, and that's to lay over the top the parts that should be over the top of the things that are happening in the background. So that rotoscoping work was frame by frame, probably about 600 frames or so I went through in all. So quite a bit, and it was time consuming. And you might be thinking, well, there's got to be an easier way. Yeah, there's some different ways to approach it. I looked at doing maybe a Luma or Alpha invert matte and try and essentially cheat around that. And the problem is that that just didn't work because there's not enough contrast between what I'm wearing and my skin tone and sort of the natural area. So that just created problems. And I had no choice but to just sort of dive in and just take care of it. So we can see here that I walk up front of it, and I have this little celebration. And again, passing over the space, I'm having to use a mask and make sure that the elements look like they belong back there. The nice thing is that some of my movements happen very fast, and what that allows for is a little bit of leeway in creating those masks. And I went in and adjusted many of them as I went through the process. If I just come in here and go back to this first set of frames, and if I just start eliminating things here, starting with the four lights, which play a part in the shot, and take off some of these elements one by one, you can see that slowly the shot is going to look a lot different. You can see now the effects, some of the effects are over the top of the gun, and just continuing through here. Just a lot of stuff to take off. This is the majority of this is the explosion in the background, taking off shockwave. Now we're getting rid of the lightning, getting rid of all those sort of elements. We've got the projectile, which I'll go over in a second, the target in the background, and the last element here is actually the projectile. And the projectile is interesting because I initially started with a solid, and I kind of made it opaque and picked a red color. And then I was struggling because it wasn't quite giving that effect that I wanted to. And I pulled in a flare and customized it and tracked it. And that seemed to work out nicely. And I have some other effects on there to give it a little more natural look. And as it approaches the explosion, it dissipates. So without that on, this is the original scene, just staring down sort of an old dirt road, and that's what I started with. Some of these other compositions, just to wrap up the end, this part here is just to get the lights into the shot at the end to sort of indicate that the weapon has been used and it's cooling down or needs to be reloaded, and then this other shot where I just had to drop in the target. So quite a bit going on here. Going into the planning phase on this was interesting. I thought I would have this down pretty much, and later I realized some of the angles weren't what they needed to be to really sort of reduce the post-production time. And you can see some of my storyboards here on the screen. that I drew up, started planning out how this was going to go. And, for the most part, that's how I shot the film. So for those of you who are thinking that, maybe I just didn't do any planning at all, there's actually a fair amount of planning that goes on. It's just a matter of how that was executed and thought about in the beginning that really makes the difference. So I hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes. This is Jason Wright from New Loyalty Entertainment, and I will see you later.